Welcome to the Reel to Reel podcast, where the stories behind the board go on record. My name is Leo, and today I am joined by two other members of the audio team at the Melrose Center, John and Chase. And we actually have a very, very, very special episode for you today. As usual, we're here to give you an insider's look at the music industry. And today we actually want to focus on the man that made this happen, the person that inspired all of this program, the Reel to Reel podcast, Mr. Bruce Hensal. He's an award-winning recording engineer and producer and has worked with many, many artists of national and local renown, which allows us every month to bring you really wonderful interviews and chats about the music industry. Just to give you a little bit of background here, Bruce Hensal's credentials range from being an assistant engineer in the Hotel California record to working with Judas Priest, Stevie Wonder, Aerosmith, and the list goes on and on and on. Bruce has a lot of experience also on post-production and has witnessed some of the biggest changes in technology in the music and film industry. So please help me welcome today to this wonderful show, the host of the Reel to Reel podcast, Bruce Hensal.
Hi, guys. Glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yes, thank you so much, Bruce, for being here today. I'm actually particularly very excited about this one. I think we're definitely going to talk a little bit about your background, but I also feel happy because in this episode, we're going to talk about what kind of brought us all together in the first place. So that's pretty exciting. I want to start today by kind of getting into the topic we're going to get today, which is the Reel to Reel workshop. Before I kind of go into that, I wanted to talk about how Bruce discovered the Melrose Center, because it is a very sort of unique, special situation that brought us together. So why don't you tell us, Bruce, how did you find out about the Melrose Center?
Well, an artist that I've worked with, Beth McKee, had done the Melrose in the Mix, and I had seen her Facebook posts about it and listened to it, and I became intrigued by the Melrose Center and what it is that all of you guys did. So I started taking a look at it, and the first time I physically saw the studio and the setup was when you did the virtual mixing MEETUP. And I introduced myself, I believe, to Chase at that night. And my friend Bob Katz was there. And we took a studio tour, and I was really impressed. And I started thinking, gosh, I'd like to get involved with this. Very good kind of a civic resource that a lot of people didn't know about. So I just, reached out to y'all, and we started seeing if we could come up with a way that we could work together. And one of the things that I'd had in the back of my mind for years, and it actually tried to get started at two different studios in town, and one of them even had reached the point where we had taken a cash deposit. But I wanted to do a recording workshop based upon the records that I had been fortunate enough to work on over my career, and to take one of the songs that was recorded and that everyone knew and sort of dissect it, recreate it in somewhat of a modern manner with digital technology. So that sort of was my introduction and the beginning of this relationship.
Yeah, actually, I remember that day. I was also kind of there. It was an AES meeting, which it was pretty.
Right.
It was fun. It was interesting to see the virtual studio. I was also curious about how you found out about the center, just because now that I know it's about Melrose in the Mix, it kind of comes full circle for me. What did you think about the stuff that you heard the first time? How did it sound?
It sounded good. Like I said, I was familiar with the artist, so I already knew her sound, and I was impressed with the job y'all did.
Yes, and that's pretty cool. I did not know about that part. That was pretty awesome. I don't know if John or Chase have any questions for him. I remember that we did do the tour with Chase. We were both pretty psyched about having you and Bob in the studio. So that's what I remember clearly.
Yeah. No, it was just interesting because again, I remember the whole event with the virtual mixing, and the whole thing just came together so strangely. I believe we went to the Melrose Center. We went to an expo like maybe a year or two prior to that. And the guy, which his name is slipping my mind at the moment, but the guy who came up with the virtual mixing or the VR program, I had sent him an email about trying to, come and do like a demonstration, like immediately after we went to that expo, and then I didn't hear from him for like over a year, and then one day I just randomly got an email from him, and he was like, I think like he had stumbled upon one of our events, and then he kind of like realized what we were doing, and then he was kind of excited to get involved. So, it was a really interesting process to watch. How something is kind of accidental led to this whole pathway of being able to do these podcasts, and also being able to do that workshop, and it's just it was interesting to watch the evolution of the Melrose Center in a certain sense that, we started off giving our classes, and then as we really moved along, just how, we were able to build these different relationships. So that's when I think about the whole thing kind of coming together, that's, I think of the big picture of it. And, it's been one of the interesting things, having Bruce involved and watching what we've been able to do in terms of, grow that relationship and grow the relationship with other professionals in the area as well. So that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, I actually remember also that the guy who developed the VR studio kind of I think part of it was also timing, because I think he was kind of having a little bit of a hard time wrapping certain parts of it, because it's a pretty intense project to build the virtual studio. But I also agree with Chase. It's pretty wonderful to see the progression of things. I personally knew Bob Katz because of I went to Valencia. I'm a Valencia alumni, and he's very active in the Valencia community, and he's always kind of counseling the audio program there. And I was very familiar with him, and I was really excited to have him there. But I kept looking. Bob was kind of commenting and comparing notes with a person that I didn't know. And I'm like, who is this person that Bob is kind of so, kind of excitedly talking about, like the acoustics and the reverb in the room? And I'm like, who is this person? And I remember I kind of just got close and make sure that all the guests were kind of, accommodated in the workshop. And then I saw Bruce. I remember started talking to him, and then it was really cool. It was like just his idea about the recordings and the project to make everything digital and everything like that. It was exciting, and then from there we just went. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think we might want to explain. Well, let me go back to one thing Chase said about the relationships, because in our last episode with Joe Foglia, that was one of Joe's main points. Was the reason for the longevity of his career was the relationships he had built with producers and directors. So I think that's a real important aspect of this industry that we're all involved in, is relationships, networking, people. I tell people when they say, well, what do you feel is your most important skill? I tell them my phone book. Just the people I've been able to meet over the years and develop relationships with.
Yep. Yeah. No, definitely. I think, and again, it's sort of like I see it in my head. I kind of have like a singer-songwriter mind. So I think of like visual weird things. I think it's sort of like a tree root. It just expands, and that's kind of what has allowed us to connect with you, and then bring all of these local artists and all these national renowned artists, and share with them their stories and everything through the podcast. So yeah, I personally feel very grateful to have connected with you, and have the team also, who I feel very grateful to know the people in the team and the audio team for us to work together. It was really great. So
I think this would be a good point to kind of explain the background or the process of the workshop and what we were trying to accomplish. What I wanted to do was take a song, specifically at this point I chose a song off of Hotel California called New Kid in Town, and I wanted to get some local musicians in, record it as close to the original arrangement and sounds as possible to the record, and then do a mix and a master of the song. Obviously, we didn't have the Eagles available to us, but we were fortunate to have 4 musicians who kind of filled a lot of different roles, and they were all well-versed in this music because they had played with a company called Classics Albums Live that reproduces Classics albums in concert. So we had my wife, Carol Hensel, on keyboards. Mario Ticlia played all the guitar parts and the bass. Billy Denmead sang all the vocal parts. And Jeffrey Bonifant played all the drum parts. So I knew that these people were capable of carrying off the performances. So it was just a matter of trying to get as close as possible to the original microphone setup, and obviously it was recorded on tape when we did it originally, and we are now in the digital age. So that's kind of a little background of what the workshop comprised.
I did have a question.
Sure.
In that context for you, Bruce. I know let's say the science aspect of recreating the recording in digital format as an experiment is like a fun experiment. Was there any other motivation for you to want to do that other than like the actual
originally
experiment?
The motivation behind the workshops I tried to get started at these other studios was to make money. I was charging a fairly hefty price for every participant.
I see. Okay, that's a good segue, because I think this gives value to what I'm going to say next, which is that the reel-to-reel workshop, which is something that preceded the podcast, is basically what you described, a way for us to grab a recording with someone like you who actually was there when the real original recording happened of a famous song like New Kid in Town, and then make it into digital format. And we did that here at the Melrose Center. And then 8 people from the community were able to partake, witness, and share with us as we were going through this process. And they did that by signing up, but it was an opportunity, basically what I consider in my own perspective, opportunity of a lifetime, because otherwise you would have to, like you said, you would have to really save up and yes, you would have to pay for that opportunity, because it is something that you don't otherwise would get. It was pretty unique. So, and I can tell you from the feedback that we got from all of the participants, they were, not only did they bond as friends and as colleagues in their paths, but also they were just like blown away. And I quote, it was a life-changing experience, end quote. So,
well, I'm humbled by comments like that.
We have it in a blue form in the library. So,
do we frame it?
But yes, that is something that it was really great how it all came together. I guess maybe we can get into a little bit more of the technical stuff. that I was curious of, and you guys, John and Chase, feel free to jump in here. What I guess, to give everybody a little background, obviously you work with some of the greats from like classical rock and roll and pop music, and now we were trying to kind of go and try to materialize one of these songs into digital format. So can you just kind of mention, and I guess in the context of workflow for you, how you feel as a person behind the board, what are like some of the major technical differences that you feel are really prominent between like the setup you had at the original recording versus the one that we did here?
Well, I think the major difference was, it wasn't tape based. The entire workflow of audio when we went digital has changed. With tape, you had so much time because you had to rewind the tape before you could listen to what you did. And that caused the workflow to kind of have a natural pause point. So in some ways, I still prefer that way of working, probably because it was the way I was taught and the way I was used to working for so many years. Now with digital, there's instant access. You don't have to wait for the tape to rewind.
Yeah.
You don't have to cut the tape with a razor blade. So there's a lot of advantages to digital. I think digital has finally, within the last 5 years, caught up with the sound of analog to the point where I would defy people to be able to tell the difference in the two properly done. And one of the things I tried to do in our recording was, I believe thanks to John, we had some wonderful plugins to use. So I took our signal chain and passed it through API channel strips, which were comparable to the console, the board that we recorded, at least the California portions of Hotel California. Hotel California was recorded in 2 locations, Miami and LA. I participated only in the Los Angeles portions of those recordings. We had an API console. When they recorded in Miami, they had an MCI console. We had an API console and a 3M multi-track tape machine. And in Miami, they had an MCI console and an MCI tape machine.
Oh, wow. So some differences there. Cool. That's actually a really big insight. I have worked with tape before, mostly for bouncing tracks of Pro Tools and things like that. But I can see where we're so used to like, how did that tape go? Let's listen, like right away.
And back then you had to wait for the tape to rewind.
Yeah. You mentioned that within the past 5 years, digital has caught up to analog. What were some kind of breakthroughs where you were just like, okay, digital has arrived? Because you've really witnessed the change for the entire kind of this landscape of it. Like, what was that point in which you said, like, okay, it's here and it's ready, and I'm ready to commit? And at what point did you go from analog to digital?
Well, I was a very early digital adopter. In the late 80s, the early 90s, I had been working at a recording studio in Tallahassee that was owned by Butch Trucks, the drummer from the Allman Brothers Band. And he had a Mitsubishi X850, the first 32-track digital tape recorder.
Like the car company?
Pardon me?
You said Mitsubishi, like the car company?
Yeah, they made multi-track digital tape machines. And, oh yeah. And they were always a little harsh sounding to me. I had my own room at the studio, and we had a Studer 850 tape machine, and I preferred to record on that, mix through an automated SSL console, and then record onto And back then we recorded on the Betamax. I would record it digital. The first digital recorder I had was a Sony F1 that recorded 2 channels of PCM audio on a Betamax tape. And then after the studio closed, I got involved in Compact Disc Interactive, which was a format that Philips had that was the forerunner to Laserdisc and to DVDs. It held 4 minutes of full motion video on a disc because obviously back in the early 90s, there was not the storage size on a disc. I built one of the first digital production studios for a company called Interlight International in Tallahassee, and we did children's Bible stories, animated stories, and I did all of the narration, recorded all of the narration, laid in all the music, did the sound effects and everything. So that's where I kind of stepped out of the music recording industry and got into a post-production. But I remember we bought our first CD recorder, and it did not record audio. It only recorded data. It cost $40,000 and was the size of a large microwave. So those are the changes I've seen.
I did have a specific question. I personally, in my personal humble opinion, Laserdisc was very good format. I just happened to listen to several like live performance recordings, video, audio on Laserdisc. That format was really great.
That was a good 2 years. The 2 years that it lasted.
Yeah. No. And probably the reason I witnessed it is because obviously in the U.S. here, because it's one of the countries that kind of develops technology very quickly. It's like a year and it's out, But like in other countries, like I'm Colombian, those technologies kind of have a longer shelf life, and they, you can still find Laserdisc in some small market in Colombia or Argentina, and they're just, one of the biggest things for me is like it still holds the quality and still sounds great and it still looks great. So, it's
if I had a nickel for every digital format that became obsolete, I'd have at least $40.
Yes.
We're seeing the end of the CD at this point as we speak. But Betamax was another example. DAT tapes, DAT, digital audio tapes, gone away. Mm-hmm. So I think, and storage solution and computer processing has continued to increase to the point where if you can spend enough money to have the highest capacity of storage and the highest throughput, you can record an unlimited number of tracks. That was I think one of the blessings and curses of the tape-based era is, I started out on a 16-track recorder, and when we went to 24 tracks, we thought, wow, this is amazing. We've got 8 more tracks to play with. And then that went to locking 2 24 tracks together with time code and essentially getting 46 tracks because you had to use two tracks for the time code. So you never had 48 tracks. So it expanded and expanded. And like I said, the Mitsubishi was the first 32-track digital recorder that I had ever seen. I did mix a record in Memphis for an artist named Toy Caldwell that was done on a Sony 32-track digital, and they were very rare, but they sounded better than the Mitsubishi. The thing about them is the tape ran in the opposite direction. And I remember the first 2 days in the studio working on the mix. Every time I'd hit play on the tape machine and it would begin, I'd jump and look over my shoulder because it was running the wrong direction.
Right.
Oh, wow. So what, you had to like place the tapes backwards or something?
Yeah,
or
you just threaded it the opposite direction. What was the take-up reel was now the feed reel.
That's pretty awesome insight. So many things I don't know. One thing I kind of wanted to ask you, and this is kind of bringing it back to the setup that we did for the workshop here. And you know, this is just a little bit of reminiscence. You guys feel free to jump in from the audio team. But I remember that we were trying to plan out the blueprint for the way that we were going to record, and I remember that we we only have one booth in the studio, and we have like a lounge room that we basically transformed into a vocal booth so that we could have more separation. I believe it was for the guitarist, if I'm not mistaken.
I think we had the vocalist singing in the lounge room.
And then the guitarist was in the ISO booth.
When I tracked, I wanted to have as many players as possible playing at the same time. So I believe we had the drummer, Jeff, Carol was playing the basic keyboard part, and then Mario was playing the acoustic guitar in the ISO booth, so that we had the chord changes all together. And then Mario went back and overdubbed the bass, put all of the electric guitar parts on. Billy had sung a scratch vocal with the basic track, so he went back in and patched the lead vocal and then sang all the harmonies, which is an amazing job because, and if we get the opportunity to play the stems and things, just isolating the vocal stems, Billy did an amazing job singing. I mean, the Eagles are known for their vocal prowess, and Billy did a great job.
Yep. Okay, guys. Well, what do you think if we just take a moment to listen to some of the stems in the session? That way we can see a little bit of the educational value of this project and kind of see what we were listening to as we're putting together this final product. So we're going to go ahead and play some of the actual stems from the session so you can see hear the vocals and all of the different elements that came together for this final product that we'll show you at the end of this session today.
There's talk on the street, it sounds so familiar. Great expectations, everybody's watching you. People you meet, they all seem to know you. Even your old friends treat you like you're something new. Johnny come lately, the new kid in town. Everybody loves you, ooh, so don't let them down.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, I think we used most of the scratch actually because he kind of nailed it right away. So yeah, so yeah, but yeah, I kind of really like the little experiment we did with the lounge, making it into a vocal booth. It actually worked out pretty well. So this is segue to leading to the question, like, is there, other than the tape situation we discussed earlier, was there any think about the setup, anything about the setup that we did on the center and Melrose that you preferred over the original setup?
Other than the fact that my wife was recording on it, not really, only because we were in a multi-million-dollar room for 9 months, and we kind of lived there. I mean, we actually moved a refrigerator into the control room in California. So it was even more of a home-like environment.
Awesome.
But the record plant was built to be, it was the first studio that was built to be more like a residence and less like an institution. So there was a big change in those recordings. And in fact, the record plant had 3 bedrooms in the back of the facility, that whatever artist was booking time in one of the 3 rooms, they would be assigned their own bedroom. The reasoning being not only just comfort and convenience, but if they didn't leave the building, they were still on the clock. So the studio owner thought, what a great idea. You know, if I can keep them here 24/7, I'm going to make more money. So it was kind of a revolution in the recording industry. And so, you know, it's hard to say, you know, obviously the microphones were completely different, the console and things like that. The thing I liked the most about the Melrose sessions were the fact that this was something that I had in the back of my mind for several years, and it was finally coming true. I think that was probably the most gratifying thing about doing the sessions at Melrose.
That's cool. No, and like you said, Carol is a stupendous keyboard player. I remember I went to the rehearsal sessions. I remember we went to Castledore Studios, and like I feel like at the very beginning, while the musicians were getting to know each other, like it sounded like the original song, especially because of her keyboard parts. She was so on point. It was crazy.
And that song, New Kid, is essentially keyboard based. Glenn Fry, our rest in peace, Glenn, was a classically trained keyboard player, and a lot of people didn't realize that. But he came up with that signature Fender Rhodes lick that just sets that song up perfectly.
Well, I was gonna remark that the thing, you know, when I'm looking back on the workshop and all the participants that we had, I really liked that. You know, it was, for one, you know, for you, Bruce, it was cool to see like your idea kind of come to life. But then also, you know, we had these students who we were familiar with coming in there, and it gave. I liked seeing how they reacted to everything, and really for them to really understand, you know, like what tools were really at their disposal, and how much actually getting a good sound like really depends on, you know, getting the recording right and getting the correct performance, because it's something that we teach. But unless you have a way to demonstrate it, I don't think it doesn't really hit home as much. So watching that and then kind of watching their reactions to it, I thought was, you know, that was, for me, that was kind of one of the cooler aspects of it.
Yeah, I think the fact that we were able to have some professional musicians in there made a big difference, and also made it go as quick as it did. We had a limited amount of time. And I tell people now, if I play the mix for them, they say, gee, that sounds close to the record. And I said, yeah, but it took only 3 people and 2 weeks, where it took us 25 people and 9.5 months of recording. So I think that's a wonderful testament to what we were able to pull off.
Yeah. No, and I agree with Chase. I love you know, my approach to recording myself, whether it's myself or I'm recording somebody else, is try to get that performance in, that good performance in, and then everything else is a joy to do because you got the right materials. So that was really great to see that philosophy of work that you have. Personally, me, that's kind of very similar. So I really like the fact that we were ready to go. We were just ready for the magic, you know. So it was pretty, heartwarming and impactful for everybody there. So I know one of the members of the audio team could not be here today, Drigo. He also participated, and I know he helped us a lot with the setup for the drums when we were recording them.
So yeah, did the room acoustics change the overall sound, and how did you say or compare trying to recreate the sound of the original recording with the different acoustics?
Well, the acoustics at the Melrose Center were obviously much more intimate. The room that we tracked in Los Angeles was huge. It was nearly the size of a soundstage.
Oh, wow.
And we had the entire band set up in that room with their entire rigs. Plus, we had a piano mic'd at all times. We had Fender Rhodes, an organ, all mic'd. So, because one of the mandates on the record that Bill Simzik, the producer, made was that on the basic track, at least all 5 people were going to play an instrument for the basic tracks, whether it got used or not. And we recorded all of the tracks with a click track. So we would do sometimes as many as 40 takes and go back and listen to those and pick the parts and then edit the multi-track tape. And there's only one song that has less than 11 edits in the multi-track tape. In other words, we'd take the intro from take 1, the first verse from take 32, the first chorus from take 12, etc., and cut them together. So the room acoustics were quite different. And I think what we did is in the mixing process, we tried to add that ambience back in to get it a little closer to the original record.
I do have, another reference for that. Did you use like panels in between the players? Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We had waist high gobos, shoulder high gobos, 18-foot tall gobos, all that rolled around. So we were able to change the sound of that space. But we tried to keep as much air in the drums, at least, as we possibly could. Although when I listen to it today, it's a very dry-sounding record. It still has, a good live feel to it.
That's a great question. I'm going to follow that up with one question from Drigo, who cannot be here today, one of the other audio instructors. Did you experience any challenges in the Melrose recording that you did not experience on the original Eagles recording?
Yes, time. It was, the time was compressed. We knew that we only had X amount of time. So I did a lot of pre-planning in my head to accomplish what we needed to accomplish. I think that was the major thing, obviously. We would, on the original record, we would start recording at 2 p.m. I say start recording, we would assemble at 2 p.m. and have breakfast. And the road crew would run out and bring in breakfast, and we'd eat, and we'd talk about what happened the day before and what we'd got, and we'd listen to a few things. And then we would decide what we were going to work on that day and then begin to formulate a plan from there. So we generally spent 12 to 18 hours a day in the studio.
Yeah.
And not all of that time was productive, but I think in the long run, it helped add to the feel and the ambience of the record.
Right. That's cool. I do have a question that is sort of related to what Chase was mentioning before about the participants. So to this workshop, all the audio Melrose Center's audio team, all hands on deck. So the 4 audio instructors, Drigo, John, Chase, and myself, we're supporting you, planning everything with you. And then we had 8 participants from the community that signed up for the workshop and committed to the full 2-week. And I guess my question is, like, from your point of view, from your perspective, how did it feel to have, I guess, other non-technical people in the room? How was that for you?
Yeah, you normally making a record, you don't have an audience, but I taught audio production at Valencia, so I was used to the classroom environment. So it really didn't feel odd. And, given the time constraints that we had, it was invaluable to have the 4 of you supporting me, because, it's your house, it's not mine. And I couldn't have done it without you. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, because I guess the reason I bring it up is because there were moments that we were just like working on stuff, and I could just step back and look at just like that and all of the participants. And one of the things that we did at the workshop at the very end was play the final product to everybody. And I remember that open house that we had for listening to the final track was kind of emotional. A lot of people of the community came out, and we had our live room in the studio full of people. And actually we had people from, acousticians, and we also had Bobcats kind of come in, which kind of leads a little bit on segue on the question that I personally had. I really admire Bob. Just his approach. He's a scientist at heart. How was it for you to work on that project with? Because Bob kind of showed up and kind of came in. How was it for you to work with him on this project? How did it feel?
Well, Bob's an old friend and has done a couple amazing projects for me. So I just thought, well, what's it going to hurt to ask him to do that, and his AES connections and things. And he afforded us the opportunity to have a couple people accompany me to the mastering session. And it just goes to show you what a big heart Bob has, and what a heart for the community, and especially the audio community that he has. And he's an amazing photographer. Took some great pictures actually while he was there. So anytime I can work with Bob, I really enjoy it.
I guess my question will be next for John and Chase, because they were the 2 lucky contestants that got picked to go and witness the mastering session. How did it feel for you guys to work with Bob?
Personally, it was pretty cool. Just generally, when I kind of think back to the kind of like the time frame of when we were doing that workshop, it was just just in general really good memory of everything. And I remember that Thanksgiving was coming up, I think, that week, and I just generally, like, when I look back, I'm like, man, that was such a good time. But getting to go to Bob's and like hear his setup and kind of be part of the finalization of everything, that was really awesome and special. And it made it kind of extra special for me anyway, in that we were kind of we were hands-on with the workshop itself at the Melrose Center, but then going to do that, it kind of felt like, in a way, we were also getting to be students too. And, I got to see a lot of stuff and, listening on his systems and being able to pick his brain a little bit, and just, it was, I don't know how much more I could encapsulate it than that, but really kind of a cool experience. So I don't know if, John, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I can basically echo the same same sentiment. It was amazing because he's got a very unique workflow. He doesn't really have a mastering desk. It's a home studio setup, but it was just really super well done. And to see, he kind of turned his entire house to like a multi-room mastering studio. It was very interesting to see the layout, the acoustics. If you're in home recording, home studio building, if you have a home studio, which I'm sitting in right now, like how it could be done at a very high level. And it was just very, very, very interesting. And echoing the same thing, got to be students as well, but just be able to just kind of see the whole project do fruition, and just be able to kind of soak that in and soak in his thoughts on how to treat this project, how to treat this song, how to serve this song and kind of bring back the nostalgia. All of that was very, very cool.
Yeah, I think the key that both of you touched on is you felt like students. I always feel like a student when I'm around Bob, just because of his vast knowledge. And
absolutely,
yeah,
I don't think any of us are served when we stop being students. I think that's the important takeaway that I have from all of that.
Yeah, I agree. I believe our purpose, in my personal opinion, is to always learn, to be learners for life. That's our best state of mind, I think. Well, with that thought in mind, let's go ahead and listen to this rendition of the Eagles song, New Kid in Town, in digital format, as done by the Melrose Center's team, the musicians involved, the production and direction of Bruce Hensal, who was one of the original engineers in the session, and also the master by Bob Katz.
Expectations, everybody's watching you. People you meet, they all seem to know you. Even your old friends treat you like you're something new. Johnny come lately, new kid in town. Everybody loves you, so don't let them down. You look in her eyes, the music begins to play. Hopeless romantics, here we go again. But after a while you're looking the other way. It's those restless hearts that never met. Oh, Johnny come lately, the new kid in town. Will she still love you? Everybody's talking about the new kid in town. There's a new kid in town. Everybody's walking like the new kid in town. There's a new kid in town. I don't wanna hear it. There's a new kid in town. I don't wanna hear it. There's a new kid in town. There's a new kid in town. There's a new kid in town.
I kind of wanted to. I know, obviously, when we were in the during the project, we had let's call them the students, the participants from the community, kind of being in the recording room as kind of like the audience / students, and they were asking you questions about, how was this and how was that, but beyond that. Did you have, while you were sitting behind the board on the chair those days, did you have any like flashbacks to the original moments when you made the original recording?
Not really, only because so much time has gone by and I'm not the same guy I was at 20 years old. So, and it was a completely different situation and time.
Yeah, yeah, I imagine. That's cool. No, it was kind of a little more educational context, so I understand.
Yeah, you during the course of the session, I remember, you would share different stories as things would come up. But is there any particular like favorite story from the original sessions that you'd want to share for the podcast? There were so many; it was hard for me to like just ask about one, but. If there's anything you would share for the listeners?
No, other than the fact that I really, probably the most vivid memory I have was the night that we were working out the solos at the end of Hotel California with Don Felder and Joe Walsh. They were both sitting in the control room. Their amps were in isolation booths. On either side of the control room, and they were in there with myself and Bill Simzik. And Don had written the song and had worked out some of the parts, but that was just a real creative moment of bouncing ideas back and forth, where Joe would say, well, what if I do this? And then Don would say, well, I'm going to do this. And just that was a real magic moment to me. I think that dueling guitar outro of that song was probably one of the highlights of my recording career.
Yeah, I remember you kind of going over the details of that in the workshop. And yeah, I agree. It's mind-blowing. That's pretty awesome. All right. Maybe we can we're getting kind of close to the time, but maybe we can get into some technical questions. John, do you have anything technical you want to ask Bruce? Because I know you kind of had more of the plug-in side of things, and you were kind of, the main on the board.
We kind of naturally cover quite a few. I guess over the course, this is kind of more contextually, like over the course of your career, how do you adjust to changes like the coming up of Pro Tools and all the different digital formats? How do you decide that this one's going to be something that's going to stay around? Did you know when Sound Tools came out that it was going to be as big as it is, and go like, okay, I need to learn that software versus maybe something that was, a platform or the Betamax tape or the $40,000 CD player? You're just like, I don't need to learn that because that'll be done in 2 years. Like, how do you like assess what's coming up and then be able to say like, okay, that's going to be something I'm going to need to get my hands onto and be very comfortable with because I see that's going to be the future? That's
a tricky question. I'm not really good at predicting trends, and I'm also pretty resistant to change. So I would say I'm a voracious reader of trade publications, and I think that's what keeps me on top of. I subscribe to Mix, Pro Sound News, Tape Op, and so that generally you'll get a heads up on what the next step is. So I would say that's the only way that I was able to stay on top of trends is to find out about them. Now with the internet, you can do research. Back in the day, you couldn't. You had to make phone calls, talk to people, and read brochures.
I went to NAMM last year. Are you a big NAMM/AES attender of the conventions?
No, I'm not. Only because I don't do well with crowds, even though I spent years mixing in 20,000 seat arenas. I used to back in the CDI days, but when it was such in its infancy, because the trade shows were the only place you can go. I've found that NAMM and AES at this point are more like Comic-Con. They're just huge. They're just,
yeah, it was huge.
they're huge. You can't cover everything. I think the last trade show I went to was the one that was held. It was here in Orlando at the Orange County Convention Center, and they were holding it here every year. But I can't. Infocom. That was the last trade show I had been to, and that's been 10 years.
It's funny because at NAMM last year, like all the pro audio stuff was in one building. And then I happened to I went out for food, got some, there's pretty decent food trucks. And then I stumbled into the main building where all the instrument stuff is. And I've never really seen a convention go all the way down that back. I was like, oh, those are all instruments. So it was like the pro sound / instrument thing. I couldn't see the end of the convention hall. And I was just like, oh, so this must be day 2's work to kind of run around here. So yeah, it was really, really big.
Yeah, that's the thing, and you've got to spend a lot of time, and I think it's a good place to renew and make new relationships and networking. But at this point in my career, I'm over it.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. It's also there was also a lot of things that were made that I didn't know were still being made. There's a company that makes a Melotron. Yeah. And I got full video of that. I was like, I've never seen one. And I didn't know that there was companies still even trying to make them. And he was like, yeah, this is how you change the sample pack. And he had to pull out the strings. I was just like, you got to be kidding me. It was insane.
Yeah. The Melotron, for most people that don't know about it, it's a tape-based synthesizer, and it has violins, cellos, voices, and things. And we actually carried one on the road with Joe Walsh's band Barnstorm for a tour. And at the last show, Joe pushed it off the stage because it was such a headache and a nightmare to maintain.
Yeah, I saw the guy try to change the sample pack. Because he said it like you're thinking load up a sample pack and a plugin, but he was like, yeah, let's unscrew this, do that, and pull this up, and there was this huge thing of tapes, and it was like, yeah, let's put the other thing, and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds so convenient, because I definitely am not going to do that, but I respect that you're still out there doing that, because I'm not buying that. It's insane.
Yeah, digital has definitely helped some of those carrying issues.
Oh yeah, I mean we used to. Bill Simzik, when he'd switch locations from recording in L.A. to Miami, he'd go to the airport with 4 big boxes of 2-inch tape reels that he would have to carry onto the airplane. Yeah. Now he can take 5 albums on a flash drive in his pocket. So, yeah, it's changed.
Thank you for joining us on the Reel to Reel podcast from the Melrose Center, where the stories behind the board go on record. Once again, my name is Leo, and I want to thank my co-hosts John and Chase, members of the audio team here at the Melrose Center. And I also want to thank for many, many reasons to the host and the person who made all of these wonderful connections and chats possible. Mr. Bruce Hensal, thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Hopefully have so much more on future episodes. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcasting app.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Reel to Reel podcast.